Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my esteemed co-host Nancy L. Hopkins. And there is so much going on this morning to share with you, and we are really pleased to welcome from AboveDuality.com our special guest this morning, David Sherjan. Welcome to Radio 5G, David.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, guys. Good morning.
So, we've got several different huge stories we're tracking simultaneously, and there is a great deal to share in terms of totally varying perspectives on what's happening with what we'll call CV for purposes of the censorship now being ramped up everywhere. There are actually certain words that the robotics will just catch and flag you for. So we'll call it the bug, maybe we'll call it CV. We all know what we're talking about. And the thing is how this is Radio 5G. We are not going to do what a certain YouTube activist has done. She holds up a sign in her YouTube videos when she has to refer to it, or says FIVEG. Anyway, we know what we're talking about here on Radio 5G. So there are a couple of major stories/rumors making the rounds that we would like to shed as much light on as possible this morning. We'd like to bring in as much factual information. Again, we're not here to cause more alarm. We are here to shed light on areas that are largely deliberately darkened, and those areas have to do not only with the harmful nature of 5G, but the purpose for which it was designed. As Nancy has shared with us going back decades in her experience as a U.S. Army energy weapons specialist, seeing the development of 5G starting back in the 1970s, that the purpose for which it was ultimately designed, it's not a big telecom upgrade to allow you to download 12 movies at the airport gate. It's a control and surveillance system. Some would say it's also designed to be able to function, if needed, as a kill grid. We would love to be able to just breezily refute that, but we can't. So unfortunately, that is in the field, and it's our responsibility to look at it. There are a couple of major stories coming in that we're going to be sharing with you while we are talking with David about his unique perspective from his work with The Great Awakening. His website is AboveDuality.com. So, David, would you like to just share with us a little bit about your background and how you came to this issue and to found your website and your work on The Great Awakening?
Sure. Well, thank you, Michael. And mirrored on everything you said. Yes, I mean, I have been really involved in this for thousands of years, as we all have. But particularly in the last 38 years of my life, I have got into this topic of the Great Awakening, the Ascension, whatever you really want to call it, what is essentially the timeline to reality of heading into an enlightened age of Earth. Now, I got into this, I've been an entrepreneur for many, many years. It's my background. I have quite a deep sort of corporate realm background and level of experience, and that sort of ranges quite wide, mainly from doing my own stuff, starting my own companies. I've been in the headhunting and recruitment space for many, many years. Now, behind the scenes, unbeknownst to a lot of my corporate connections, I have been really researching a number of topics, and the broader picture of it is what is going on in the world. There is something wrong with the Matrix. So many of us feel that. So many of us have felt that for many, many years, ever since even we were very, very young. And right back from my father was MI6 military intelligence, quite deep, in fact, not deep black, but I found out about that just as little as about 10 years ago when I was starting to gear up to move to Canada from the UK. And this was right after my first company was being sort of broken up and sold. Anyway, what really sparked me off was I'd got back in touch with a contact of mine who I had been very, very chummy with, great friends within the Army for a short time when I was based out of Wiltshire, TA, as a junior officer, a very short time. And we got to talking one day after we reconnected, and I think we were talking about Star Wars, actually. But anyway, he very blasé said, hey, you should research the secret space program, the SSP. And we just kind of moved on in conversation. And I did. And I got into a number of sort of wrong places, and it sort of turned out to be a dead end. But those pieces led me on to Project Camelot, which you two are certainly aware of, whereby that changed my life completely, 100%. Listening to some of the whistleblowers on there, all the way from David Wilcock to William Tompkins's testimonies. I mean, Kerry's got the largest volume and body of work on the web. What she's done is phenomenal. And that sort of has branched me off into many, many other places. Every other SSP and disclosure channel you can imagine, I've researched and continue to, in fact. But as that went on over the last 10 plus years, it sort of culminated to a choke point over the last year, in fact, as I was running two businesses, very far removed from the disclosure topic. And it was apparent from the intel that I was getting from some of my own sources, plus what was actually coming out in the mainstream from the Navy, from the Air Force, and of course from the Space Force funding and official launch, although we've had that stuff for a long, long time, that, holy cow, something's happening here. And I really got to that place mentally where I said, the most important work I can be doing now is not what I'm doing. And I need to start to bring out some of the things that I know, some of the people that I speak to, and start to focus on this grand final push in this Great Awakening channel. Of course, 5G is very much a part of this agenda, which I'm sure we'll get into today. So Above Duality is really a platform. I've got my own radio show, which is starting as well very shortly here. And it's focusing on equipment and empowerment of certainly knowledge, but resources for people to do really one thing. And this, I think, is the most important thing that we can talk about today, although I'm sure we'll talk about lots of other stuff, is to give power back to people who are in the dark on this stuff, obviously, and to people like us who are really awake, but to give them the awareness that they are sovereign, divine beings incarnate in human form, obviously, but we have the power to not need governments, not need medical establishments, not need infrastructure, not need money, in fact. And this is what's actually going to happen. We're heading into this channel now in humanity. But that's what the platform is for, is to give it empowerment in that area, equipment, and certainly encouragement to normalize the struggle that they're going through in this Great Awakening. So anyway, Cole's notes, there's a lot more to that story. It's very boring, but that's me and that's AD.
Oh, right. Thanks for that, David. The idea that you share, of course, as you know, Nancy and I are very much in tune with, that we are sovereign divine beings, and that truly owning and exercising that sovereign power is the answer to so many of the challenges we're facing. It's an answer that at the consciousness level will then empower all the practical 3D on the ground solutions, but it begins at the higher levels. And of course, at the same time, we're in the middle of this crisis, whether you want to call it an artificially manufactured crisis or not, depending on which perspective you want to take on it. It is certainly unique situation in our lifetimes that we are all dealing with in the present moment. And what I'd love to be able to do is integrate this high metaphysical perspective of our soul sovereignty and how we can best leverage it strategically and integrate that with what we're seeing on the 3D level. You got in contact with me about 10 days or so ago, sharing information that you had received through, and I've heard this from several other channels, about what Nancy and others have heard referred to as the plan, and which, millions of us who have been following this are following Carrie Cassidy or, David Wilcock back in the day with his Financial Tyranny series. It's the great rumored mass arrests of the cabal, the takedown of the dark faction, the 75,000 plus sealed indictments finally rolling into action. As long ago as 2011, when I first started to go down this rabbit hole, I read the reports that there was a global currency reset coming, that there were mass arrests coming, that white hats in the Pentagon and elsewhere working with sympathetic allies and intelligence communities around the world were planning to take down what we'll just call the corrupt elite action connected to the central banking families, connected to the so-called Illuminati, and who run the elite pedophile rings as a combination dark ritual and blackmail scheme. All of that, would be so wonderful if it were true. And that we are being told is now being rolled forward under the cover of the lockdown, and that the virus and the lockdown were not planned by the good guys, but are rather a final move, desperation move by the dark faction. And the white hats are saying, right, okay, this is the last throw. You've exposed yourselves, and now, under cover of the lockdown, we're going to arrest you, take you down, airports are shut, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I am beginning to view this with a lot of skepticism, and I would be glad to hear your take on it, Nancy's take on it, because the way I like to frame this is, if we're talking about the sovereign power of the soul, our own divine nature, and how we can utilize it, leverage it, empower ourselves, our families, our communities to overcome these challenges, that sovereign power can be greatly weakened, watered down, and given away if we're waiting for Big Daddy Savior in the form of Pentagon white hats, patriots. Now let me just say, I know full well, God bless them, that there are Pentagon white hats, patriots, courageous men and women working to take down the pedophile rings, working to bring the dark faction to justice. God bless you. And I'm not by any means saying you're not there, but I really encourage us all to look very carefully at this notion of the big rescue, and all we got to do is sit back and wait for it. To me, that is a really subtle, very clever, potentially a scheme of the dark faction itself to get us to just sit around rather than exercise our sovereign power, rather than work with our communities, create local power structures, decentralize the system, take care of your neighbors, essentially escape from the power of the grid. So framing it that way, I'd really love to see us proceed along these lines. We've got some information coming in to share about how 5G is being rushed into schools under the cover of the lockdown, information about how potentially 5G is interacting with and activating the bug. So we're going to roll that into the program as well. But Nancy, before we get into this, I'd just love to get your perspective on how this can roll forward today.
I want to listen to what David says. I think I love him.
I think I love you. Okay. It's an old David Cassidy song. Okay.
He's talking my talk,
ahead,
so please, David, you answer that question. I just want to hear what you have to say.
That's very kind, Nancy. Michael, I just got chills when you were talking. And the reason I got chills is because I absolutely agree with you. And you're one of the only people, that I was listening to Sasha Stone yesterday, the wonderful Sasha, who was also in his very broad-toned way. They've just been shut down in Bali is where he's at. I think it's Bali. I may get that wrong. Anyway, he was a little bit frustrated, so that kind of came across in the interview. But anyway, not many people are talking about this the way you just did, Michael. What do I mean by that? Well, you're absolutely right. Let me go back a second. I sat down with a friend yesterday, and wonderful, beautiful guy, really, really good friend of mine, Christian, and I love Christians. I love the Christian faith, a beautiful faith. I don't have a fixed faith, but whoever is listening to this that does, welcome. You're absolutely welcome in certainly my world, and I'm sure Michael and Nancy's world as well. Is he was sort of talking about the second coming. And I could be wrong on this, and I don't want to get into a sensitive topic here. But I said, look, Matt, his name's Matt, I'm going to say something to you, and it may go against your beliefs, and that's okay. I believe that Jesus came here so he wouldn't have to come here again. What does that mean? He came here to remind us that we have everything we need to take things to new densities and new levels. This is what this is really about, new densities. And there are, Michael, you're right, there are a lot of people, including in my intelligence circles, who are not involved in actual operations, boots on the ground, who have fallen into the trap again. And they're wonderful people, and I love them. But I want to give them a shake, because no one is coming to save us. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't white hat operations going on, people aren't being arrested, and indictments aren't being unsealed, et cetera, et cetera. But once that happens, then what? Let's just say everyone gets rounded up. Everybody knows. The truth comes out. Full disclosure, full in all caps. Full disclosure. Technology is released. The secret space program is fully released and declassified, and we have all this wonderful tech. Now what? Governments are still in power. They still have control, which means they still have the ability to be manipulated and control the people. So we're missing a trick here. And the trick is the arrest, the alliance, the cabal, although extremely important to know about, they're not irrelevant. We are missing the main work we should be doing right now, which is certainly educating and becoming aware of these things that are controlling us. But we need to refocus here on the light work, on the vibrational work of raising our consciousness, raising our vibration, and bringing that light and love to people, and focusing on moving further and further away from governmental systems. Now, do I believe that Trump is a good guy? Yes, but I don't put my faith in any one man. I do and have got very strong intel to say that he is a part of this alliance movement through military intel, through Milintel, MI. However, it's irrelevant to me. It's irrelevant who's running the show and what they're doing, because my main focus is to branch away from any form of control. The left and right's irrelevant. It's only up and down. It's only freedom and control. That's all it is. And, as Max Spears talked about, the late Max Spears, the wonderful Max Spears, who I didn't actually get to know very well, unfortunately, he would always say that it was a battle, the draconian, the draconian agenda, the reptilian, the reptoids agenda, was to control the human heart. Why? Because they could never think they could do all the soul manipulation and trapping and things like that, and they're wonderfully advanced, although they're a very warfaring race for obviously nefarious reasons. but they can never control or figure out, in fact, because they're negatively vibrationally inclined, even though they're higher density, they're negative vibration. They couldn't ever figure out, as far as I could tell, and I believe the high vibrational states of the human heart. The human heart chakra stands for what? Love, compassion, empathy, among other things. This beautiful green energy center that we have. And they could never figure out how to control that because they haven't got that. And it's a vibrational mismatch. And so we need to get back on this now. We need to stop looking at Twitter, looking at Instagram. I'm guilty of this, by the way. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. And we need to get on the ascension path of doing the day-to-day work and helping others do the same thing, because that's the only thing that gives us our full power back.
I have to tell you that last night I got into the same discussion we're having here. It's been a creeping, because I know a large amount about the White Hats. It's this creeping feeling that it's never this easy. And it takes me back to the Revolutionary War, where they fought for, 7-8 years? And yet it almost fell apart in the aftermath, where left became left and right became right. And it was, if you look at that time frame, it's amazing that we survived it all. And I think we're up against the same thing within the concept of the 3D. And yes, I absolutely, applaud you both for going here, but it's one of those timing things. We can see that the story we were weaving is seemingly coming to some kind of fruition, and yet nobody can see beyond the story. And beyond the story is what we really have to look at, and that is exactly what you're talking about, is we don't need governments if we are our own authentic selves, because we'll be in the land of the golden rule. Do unto others. Yep. I just wanted to, say that this is not just you guys. There is a trending, from the truly awake. There's a trending, okay, we got to pay attention. More so maybe than ever.
Right. Yeah, it's this delicate dance we've had to do all the way along, and Nancy and I have touched on this a lot of times, which is I have done activist work starting about a year ago when this radio program was founded, Radio 5G. I was working with some of the activist leaders in Taos, New Mexico, who were looking at a languaging change that was coming into their ordinances, specifically designed to give a backdoor to the rollout of 5G in the beautiful wilderness community of Taos, New Mexico. And the leaders there put together a beautiful activist movement, more than 1,000 signatures in a county of 10,000 people. And 300 protesters showed up at the county commissioners meeting to protest the proposed land use regulation changing. And the county commissioners were caught flat-footed and exposed. But it didn't change their vote, and the ordinance was approved. So this was a beautiful, on-the-ground 3D action to prevent the physical installation of 5G towers in a famous artistic community, right? So at the same time, we had a meditation. I've been a kirtan artist in the yoga chant tradition of India for more than 20 years. We held a meditation and kirtan. And that blend of 5D and 3D action against 5G, that was an example of what we're trying to do here. Now, when we're talking about this challenge we face of moving up, as you say, David, it's not right, left, it's up or down, it's freedom or control. And to move into greater freedom, to move into greater spiritual awareness, while at the same time looking at credible reports that 5G installation is being rushed into schools nationwide under the cover of the lockdown, I think, all right, that's a major 3D on-the-ground problem for when our kids go back to school. The link between 5G and the bug is apparently not just that, of course, EMF and Wi-Fi lowers your immune system. There are also credible reports that there is a specific technology designed into both the virus and the 5G activation dynamic that turns on a marker in the virus, which survives the virus. You work through it, it passes through, you're lucky enough to recover, and it stays in your system as a control device for 15 to 40 years and is passed to offspring. These are reports that are coming in that I think are worthy of exploration and attention. There is also, thank you, Lord, what we'll call a metaphysical protocol for reversing that marker and dissipating it. And we're working with the Shungite field on that already. Just yesterday on Shungite Radio, Nancy had our wonderful teacher and mystic, Reverend Mayan Artumid, from our Templar community in Colorado as a guest, and was exploring exactly how the Shungite field can be used with this, I want to call it a sacred science protocol to disable the marker that has been designed into the bug. Obviously, that's a deep topic. I don't necessarily want to go into that, but I do want to explore the heart activation that you bring up, David, because this is the key to the ascension. And the ascension is a topic that, gets very vague and, so many facets and interpretations and perspectives on it. And you don't have to believe in it for it to be real in your life. It's not like you have to review all the Carrie Cassidy shows, listen to all the Nancy Hopkins shows, and get up to speed on David Wilcock's definition of what ascension is. All you have to do is activate your heart, the human treasure of the heart. And as you say, it's become very clear to a lot of us who have studied this that that is the one thing that the dark faction does not understand, cannot understand. They know they lack it. They know it's somehow the key to everything. They yearn to control it and therefore us, but it stands outside of their reality. It's like this wonderful line from Lord of the Rings. Gandalf is saying to everyone, okay, in folly or wisdom, we have sent the ring to be destroyed in the care of two little hobbits. And Sauron reckons everything according to malice and fear, and into his mind the thought will not come that any having the ring will seek to destroy it. If we choose this, we will put him out of his reckoning. So that's, I sort of feel like that's where we are. We have this amazing power of the heart, of love, of compassion, of empathy. And the magic that we're already seeing happening around the country and around the world is the way that people are using the quarantine and the lockdown to turn to each other, to help each other. The Italians singing across the streets to each other. People setting up neighborhood watch, even within social distancing. How can we take care of the little old lady next door? How can we make sure, that the single mom down the streets doesn't run out of food? And, for people listening to this, we may have a small audience, but we've got a powerful, awakened, select audience. And as Nancy likes to let us know, we have audiences on the upper levels as well who tune into us from, as you would say, David, higher densities. So anyway, I'd love for us to explore as we're talking here, okay, how do we do this blend? How do we, address the 3D reality of they're switching on, they're installing 5G in the schools under cover of the lockdown, if that's happening, and we have credible reports it is. All right, is there a sacred science protocol that we can spread and share that actually works with the Shungite field to disable the virus on an energetic level? These are the things that get me excited. So just wanted to put this out there. Love to hear what either of you have to say at this point.
Yeah, Nancy, do you want to pop in there? Or
No, David, please go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Very eloquently put. Very good. I had something that popped into my head that I wanted to start off with, but it's just gone out again. Damn it. Anyway, yeah, you're right. Oh, that was it. This is about leadership here, and not manipulative leadership, sort of what we're talking about in terms of action. And our role specifically, individually, not that we're ever trying to control anyone. We can control what we do. Whoever wants to come with us on that journey is welcome. Those who don't and oppose us, we can't help them yet. They will come to their own rise in consciousness at the right time, and we must trust that and not try and control it. Otherwise, we're just being more government. It's another government, a spiritual government, but it's still a government. So let's be mindful of that. But yeah, I mean, Tony Robbins I've studied leadership in the companies that I've built with hundreds of employees that I've dealt with over the many, many years. And I've learned this only from doing it wrong time and time and time again, embarrassingly so, in fact. But with any topic, and this is really, really important, is there's 3 mandates to leadership. I think Tony Robbins really had this right, regardless of what he's been doing behind the scenes as a billionaire, being part of the club. He's got some wonderful, wonderful teachings on practical psychology. Very, very important, especially in 3D. Now, what are those 3 mandates? Number 1 is to see things as they are, all right? Just to take us, whatever it is, whether you've got a financial crisis, whether you've got a CV crisis, whether you've got a spiritual crisis. The base point is I need to move forward, right? We need to move into action. And number 1 is to take stock of the situation. How much debt am I in? What's the CV doing? How serious is it? Et cetera, et cetera. But don't see things worse than they are. See things as they are, not worse than they are. That's really, really important, because that's where the human form goes. I know I do. I have to fight with that. We all do. Number 2 is, on the 3 mandates, is to see things better than they are. Create a compelling future. What's your goal? Simon Sinek. What's your why? Where are you trying to get to? What is the result that you are after here? Number 2. And number 3, of course, is make it that way. Take, not necessarily radical, in some cases it needs to be, but take consistent, focused, intentional action day to day on the habits that you need to perform your daily rituals, and not in sort of a pagan way, your daily practice. Not that paganism is bad at all in many respects, but to make it happen consistently a little bit more over time and use the compound effect for it to grow. And we're at such a point in time, in consciousness, in vibration on the planet, where making manifest things is going to become more and more easy for those who develop those skills. So yeah, that's sort of what we have to do. In terms of the negative stuff that's coming in, I think it's a beautiful thing, Michael. I think it's a beautiful thing they're sneaking in 5G in schools. Don't shoot me yet, because this is part of the awakening. This unfortunately, and Michael, I think I'd said to you that I'd received higher messages on this, in that at this time, and certainly over the last 10 years, there has been from higher realms a call to return of many souls, many spirits, voluntarily, of course, as we know, it's free will, to return to source. At this time on Earth, there's just too much vibration from human souls and human beings here on Earth. There has been a very deliberate and very peaceful call to return. So when people, death obviously is an illusion, we know that, although it's difficult to process in 3D, it will become less so as we move into other densities. And I've experienced a ton of that myself, is to realize that life and death are just 2 points on the eternal continuum of the soul's journey. However, not to take anything away from people who are, going through a loss, very, very challenging. Let's find compassion and empathy with them. But the negative things that are happening right now are part of people coming into an awakening. If children get sick, if parents get sick, if they die, God forbid, in things that are happening in schools, what's going to happen from that? Well, people, hopefully, fingers crossed, with our help, and I don't wish this, by the way, but if it does happen, is that it will cause another awakening, another rise in consciousness. And it may well be that's part of the journey that we have to endure. Now, I don't want it to be. I hope it's not. I hope we can get to enough people and stop this damn thing before it sort of becomes integrated fully. And I don't think it will be integrated fully. I really believe in the light. I believe that it will be stopped. So yeah, I just think not to lower our vibration into this is happening, that's happening, and it's important to be aware of. Don't get me wrong. I go into the awareness of it, but you got to remember we're trying to reach as many people as possible, and the masses out there, the majority of people, though this is changing, the majority of people do not know or haven't learned the skills yet to and not inferior by any stretch of the way. That's really important to know. They're not inferior beings. We've just learned new things, new skills as sort of light warriors that they will also learn. Just as teaching a apprentice mechanic to become a mentor mechanic, the same thing. No one's better than anybody else. But what was I saying with that? God, I had one of your pop out of your head thoughts. Bloody hell! I was talking about the ascension.
Yeah, I think we were following the thread of sovereignty and.
I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
I got it. Oh, it's been one of those mornings. I love it. Okay.
I know what you mean.
Is that most people cannot hear this information, Michael and Nancy, and then go back into high vibration. They haven't learned that skill yet. No, they can't. They can. But we have to be careful about, we're talking to two audiences here. We're talking to the awakened and the non-awakened, and there's some in the middle. Sort of 1, 2, 3 layers. We have to be mindful of who and how we're sharing this, because what we don't want to do. We don't want to cause any more fear and panic that needs to be. However, this stuff does need to be talked about. But I think that's an important point to raise, because our job as light warriors here is certainly to educate, but it's also to teach people to, vibrate the highest they can. And you have to meet them where they're at on the mountain. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in at the end there. It's not a critique at all.
Let me just jump in here for a second, because I agree with everything you're saying. But I think that what we need to do is to step back and to look at it from a strategic standpoint. Okay, because we sometimes go down the rabbit hole and get involved in tactical operations. The white hats. Is Trump good? Is he bad? Is he all that. Okay? But if you stand back and you look at it from a strategic standpoint, what are the resources that we can grab onto and say, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Right now, you've got every single human being on the face of the earth, if they have a television or a radio or the internet, looking at the same thing. The focus has never been like this before. We had 9/11, that came close. Okay? Now, let's stand back and look at 9/11 because it came close. They have satellites looking at the Earth, taking readings of the electromagnetic field of the Earth. And prior to 9/11, they got readings that spiked off the charts right through the event. So...
Right, that was just before the event happened, right? Minutes or an hour?
No. The day before it started up. It was not just immediately. It was building. People had a premonition. Because why? Why would they have had a premonition? Why would so much of this electromagnetic energy just kind of erupt? What was the change in the field of Earth? Human thought. Okay, now, right now, if you look at where we're at, you've got everybody, kind of hankered down, really looking for the first time, maybe in some of these people's lives, at reality in so many different ways. But on top of that, we have got celestial significant events that are indicating everything is in a change, but it's in a change that is cosmic. Because I'm assuming you're familiar with the we're going to call it a comet now, because it's not either a comet and it's not a meteorite that hit Karelia, Russia on the 21st of February. Okay.
Yeah, I watched your show on Camelot as well. Yes.
Okay, that particular event, if you really analyze it, the light itself was like nothing. It wasn't a comet. Okay, why wasn't it a comet? Well, because it didn't have a tail. Well, why was it not a meteorite? Well, because it didn't have a tail. Okay, now, why was it this bright, unbelievable ball of light that was coming in? Well, it could have been a meteorite. Because a meteorite is a chunk of something that's coming in. Okay, and the reason it's not a meteorite is because for that much light to be reflected from the sun, if it was even in an altitude, because I don't know exactly what time, an altitude where it would be in sunlight, to be able to glow like that. Because why does a meteorite start glowing? You don't see a meteor coming at you. It's fast, it's small, it's coming at you. You don't see it. The meteorite is when it starts to heat up and it puts that tail out. Okay? Now, none of that happened. So what was this ball of light that crashed into a shungite field? Then if you look at it and you go back to the Hopis, and we've talked about this, the Hopis prophecies of the end of the fourth world and the beginning of the fifth world. What are they saying? They're talking about, blue light falling to Earth. And this thing has been looked at every time there was a blue anything in the sky. Everybody, is it the blue? No, this definitely was that. Okay, so where are we at? Well, we've got this stuff called shungite that is so magical that we only realized in 14 when I got led to it, and I happened to be a person on radio and started talking to JP, who we got into it too, and Walt Silva, and blah, 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 blah. A snowball of activity that makes people now. I mean, my job was to get shungite to the masses, and I can honestly say I got shungite to the masses. There's all over the world doing magical things, but now it's got an upgrade of energy. And I really think that if you just think back on when you might, David, you might have understood the dangers a little more. I might have theoretically understood the dangers a little more of, relying on somebody else. But of course I felt that I was part of the something else. And, when I look back at it, it was when that energy hit this planet that I started to go, what else is happening? It was like an upgrade. I knew it was an energetic upgrade, but I think it was also an awareness upgrade. So if that's all true, then what you've got is you've got people all over the world who have just had an energetic upgrade. Now that means that they have more, let's say, more energetic energy to influence the subconscious, the super subconscious. Because the rules of cosmic reality is what we think it is. And the second rule is majority rules. But that does not necessarily mean numbers. I know it doesn't mean numbers. It means focusing power. How much thought can you put into the scenario? What is your manifestation capabilities? And that's why I think that the message that we're giving now is what's needed now. It wouldn't have made sense to most people. But right now, they're looking at everything. I mean, their reality is shattered. Shattered since this thing fell on the earth. So we are in, is Jesus coming as a second coming? Who knows? Is Trump, who cares? We have to look at ourselves like we're talking about. Because in the key is if we can develop faster, we were sent here to be pathfinders, to go where no man or woman has ever gone before, to be able to influence the subconscious so that people, it's not a matter, think of how long it took us to learn the stuff we learned. These people are going to get it. It's going to be a download of information. We don't have to worry about them struggling with this. If we put enough compassion and love and empathy and understanding and talk about the people that are not aware or weren't until all this started happening, that something is very wrong. So I just wanted to have us look at the whole stage. We can do this, and we can do this without too much angst as long as we get that message to people.
I love it. Thank you for the course correction, Nancy. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it too, Nancy. The the point you're bringing forward about that it on a certain level it doesn't matter about whether or not the White Hats are coming, or whether or not Christ is coming, the mass arrest, etc. At the same time, what is the strategic angle on this? What are the resources that we have in hand right now that we can leverage? It's as, if you'll forgive me for the analogy here, there's a favorite military movie with which we're all familiar, and it's about the Third Army isn't going to get to Berlin under George S. Patton unless his superior general lets him have the oil. And so now he cuts them off. It's like, okay, where does the oil have to go? What's the strategic allocation of resources that is going to get this job done? And when I look at where we are right now,
human thought,
go ahead.
It's human thought. You see, David's right. We're in a situation where manifestation is very, very quick by people that are throwing off the doubts and understanding. If you can imagine it, you can create it. We don't need any gas or oil. We need human thought.
Right. That the human thought is the gas or oil. That's the analogy. So let me just pose something here. There's a paper that just came out, which is gaining a lot of circulation, credibility. I think it's some UK scientists with World Health Organization analysis of what's rolling forward, worst case scenario, best case scenario with the virus. And they crunched the numbers coming in from China and from Italy, and then their best epidemiological forecasting software of, okay, what would the scenario be in the U.S. if we didn't do anything? Well, obviously we're not doing nothing, there's the lockdown, but it was about 2.5 million dead. What's the scenario with them doing something but not everything? Well, it's about 1.5, and then the ultimate lockdown social distancing scenario is 1 million, which is still the most catastrophic thing that would have happened in 100 years. So what this logically leads to in terms of how long it takes to develop a vaccine and what they can tell everybody in the fear matrix that has been created. Wait a minute. I do have a point I'm getting to here.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Okay, just because what I want to get back to is what we can do on the thought level. Okay? I want to roll with your point here. I just need to try to thumbnail what this research paper that's getting a lot of play is ultimately saying. They'll say, okay, even if we best case scenario, we just turned into a bad flu
but
season.
But who's your reference? This research paper. How do you know it's not just propaganda? Period. Okay. Now the thing of it is
I'm not saying it's not just propaganda, Nancy. The point is that it is being rolled out with the highest levels of scientific credibility that makes the propaganda work. Okay,
but it's 3D propaganda.
I'm not saying it's real. I'm saying it's the rationale that will be used for medical martial law, forced vaccinations, and the technology that will be placed in those vaccinations. And what I'm calling for as the answer is human thought, the Shungite field, as exemplified in what you and Walt and your allies in the Jinn and the elementals and the archangelics did to purify the King Mine disaster in Colorado. I'm thinking that strategically, before we let this propaganda BS roll forward to rationalize medical martial law, we need to do a massive, miraculous leveraging of human thought and the Shungite field to dissipate this now.
Okay. Why I was trying to stop you is because you're talking 3D, you're talking Newtonian physics, you're not talking enterology. And you're absolutely correct. From an enterology standpoint, we can get that virus out of here within an instant. That's just a fact. We have been told not to. Okay? Now, we took care of the marker.
By whom?
By our guides. Okay? Because we need people right now to be in this state of total focus. Okay? The marker's gone. Don't worry about it. Okay? They do not have control. In fact, this whatever's happening on the 3D, remember, we are transitioning to a new reality. Some of us are already there, but we have to muck around with the old one. And I say muck around because I want the best, the least offensive way of getting us into a new reality. Yeah, there's going to be the dark side and people that, they're not going to make the transition. What is this awakening? This awakening is reality is what you think it is. Okay? So, in my reality, we don't have any, massive deaths happening. We don't have massive economic things happening. Because I believe that the people who are now really coming awake, because of the new energy that the planet's got, no matter where you want to think of it. I mean, people have different stories as how it came. That energy is what makes the difference. It's so malleable now. You can make it into whatever you want. And that's what they're terrified of. That's why they're trying to get 5G out, to stop people who are coming awake, realizing their own capability of manifestation. And every time somebody really gets it, it affects the subconscious, the super subconscious. And then you get download. I've seen people turn around in an instant. My best friend, she's known me for 20 years. She's still not sure if I'm crazy or not. And then all of a sudden, the Carillion meteorite hits, and she goes, "We're in a reset." And I said, "What do you mean we're in a reset?" She said, "I understand what you were saying to me. We're in a reset right now. It started." And one little trick, makes the connection, and boom, they get a download. And that's what I believe we can do. And the way we do it is, yes, we're doing energetics. A lot of people all over the world are doing energetics to make a change to this. And just a reminder of the science. This science is known. It was Raymond Reif that actually showed that you could kill off viruses with an electromagnetic wave. And that was way back in the 30s. Well, now they know how to turn them on. And so people are walking around with this very basic cold virus that's laying dormant in their body. And when they get hit with the 5G being an electromagnetic signal, can program that virus, can do something to that virus to wake it up, and probably imprint it with this, this marker that you're talking about. So all of this, but it can be stopped because it's energy. And who's got more energy than anybody? So how do we get this? We keep talking. The more we talk, the more people hear, the more they get it in the subconscious. David, I'd really like to hear what you have to say about this, because Michael and I.
All right.
Wait a minute. We're at top. Yeah. Let's just take us a little.
Yeah. Let me just. I want to share just one thing as we roll into the music for our little break here, and that is my partner Eleni is listening upstairs, and she just shared something beautiful that I want to, as a parting note for our break. She said, "What if the second coming is our collective consciousness rising with the blue star energies made possible in the 3D by this cosmic blue light activation, aligned in Christic love and light, dispelling all levels of malevolence and harmful interference by lower vibratory intrusions? What if?" Well, that's what I believe. Anyway, we'll think on that and roll into some music, and see you in about 5 minutes.
And we're back.
Hey, welcome back to Radio 5G, everybody. Michael Henry Dunn, my co-host Nancy Hopkins, and our special guest David Sherjan. And
can I say one
Nancy,
thing? Can I just Radio 5G. That was Natalie Rise. Generations Will Rise, because we can't put it on the YouTube. But I highly recommend that you look up Generations Will Rise, and it's spelled R-I-Z-E, by Natalie Rise. Because, I mean, that was a perfect song for what we were talking about. Hi, David.
Hi. Hello. I'm making a note of that, Nancy. Hold on. Generations Rise. Beautiful. I love the conversation, guys. Really powerful. Let's keep it going. I woke up this morning, and for the first time in probably a couple of months, and my situation in terms of my 3D situation is very good. I've done a lot of things to set myself up and really be very free, and in terms of the 3D stuff, very comfortable. Good for me, absolutely. However, the last sort of 1 or 2 or even 3 months, if I probably think about it, I have had this as sort of an intuitive empath, or having those tendencies, this unbelievable anxiety and fear and dread. Every time I woke up in the morning, it didn't really matter what the situation, and it was very, very crippling, as you know, fear is, and I'd have to go into very early meditation and get rid of it, which I can do, and it's no problem. But for the first time, probably the first morning in that time frame, I woke up this morning with a very wonderful stillness and peace. And there's a wonderful quote, I can't remember who it comes from, but it's about obviously dark times. And it says that every storm, every major storm, has a small cylindrical space where a gull may fly silently through. And not to say sort of we're in the eye of the storm right now, we might be. But I do love what you're saying, both of you. Nancy, specifically to pick up on the higher consciousness narrative here, so important, and a reminder to me to stay focused in this. Now, I can't remember who said this, whether it was DW, David Wilcock, or somebody else, but they said it in the last year, or it was Corey, I can't remember. But they said a really, really important thing. And Nancy, what you're talking about with thought is absolutely bang on, and I know we all know that here. That's a great, great reminder, is that in order to shift something in your world and the universe, if we do it collectively, all you need to do is give focus to it. Whatever it is, whether it's a small thing, whether you're programming water, all the way through to whether you're manifesting great things, sort of in the etheric or that way, all something needs to exist. Whether it's 3D or other densities, in fact, as we go into other densities, it will we'll obviously find this out. We'll have more of a knowing, so we'll be able to deal with it much more powerfully. Is to give something thought. That applies to the dark as well. Every time we mention the CV, it's not just, or even think about it, because our thoughts produce the electromagnetic discharge in our body. We call them emotions, which is why governing your thoughts is probably the most important thing you can do in 3D, among others, in my opinion. Is if we keep mentioning 5G, CV, now not to take it off the table, we need to keep educating people, it's important, but to be mindful that we are allowing it to continue and to continue to grow at some level, especially people like us who have heightened awareness. So let's not change direction, let's change or continue to remember the focus or the importance of the focus on this power of thought. And start to, and this, I'm sort of speaking to myself here, because let me take this is a tangent here, but I meet probably with my business endeavors that I'm getting rid of now, but I probably meet hundreds of people every month. Many of them new, probably 80% of them are new people, and it's part of my mantra. I have a mantra that says SAGE up on my board. It's serve one new person today, add value to one new person today, give gratitude for whatever it is today, and then E is to empower, equip, and encourage people today to give energy. And I try and do that every day. Not always succeed, but I try and do that. Anyway, so I'll always try and go out and talk to people, including in this time when we've been encouraged to socially give physical space, give me a slap on the wrist, whatever. Anyway, I love bringing hope to people.
Let me just, can I jump in? Can I jump in here for just 1 second because of what you said about the space? I got, Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Space. We're giving people space. And if you think about it, let me put it to you this way. The way that I get through analyzing the 3D information and not letting it manifest in my mind is because I know I'm in a different reality. And that I'm looking back at an old reality. And it's clear in my head. Okay? So I'm not engaged in that old reality. I look at it as like it's a chess match. And if you see the fact that you've got, because I've been watching it, it's a long story, I won't get into it, but since 14, Walt and I have worked to change to make a new reality using energetics. And so I've been standing in this new reality, and one of the problems you have is social interaction because people are splitting off into two different realities. And you keep getting pulled back with the old one. And maybe just this 6 feet is going to make the difference between a person who slips into the new reality and then gets the total perspective. Maybe this social distancing is part of the plan. You know what I mean. But
that's very interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and you could well be bang on. I feel that. I get little pings and downloads and stuff like almost certainly you two do as well as we chat as I chat. Yeah, just to round off, I love that, Nancy. Absolutely. I probably since. I don't know, I'm going to get this wrong, but probably, let's say Friday, since Friday last week, maybe even Monday, let's say, let's bring it to this week, I've probably spoken to, let's just say 20, maybe 30 new people, quite a few people. And I can tell you 95% of them, and they're all, none of them are related in any way, and I don't know them, I'm talking about new people that I've met, they know something is up. They are aware of something from the base level of something doesn't feel right, all the way through to they know about the Great Awakening. It's kind of been a big gamut. But it's really buoyed me Anyway, I just wanted to share that. I agree, Nancy. So let's get back onto that topic. And of course, as you know, spacing or non-spacing consciousness, it doesn't matter the distance. Local or non-local, it doesn't matter. It's instantaneous. And Nassim Haramein, I talked about this in an interview the other day. If you follow his work, he's got some wonderful stuff. I love him. And he talks about when he was, and I'm not a scientific guy, so I might get specific terms wrong here, but they were talking about some of the work they were doing with the analysis of electrons and protons, microscopic, almost sort of quantum level, very, very small stuff. And he was saying that they have found, if you go to his work, the Resonance Academy, we've got some wonderful stuff. And he was saying that, I think it was a proton or an electron, let's call it a proton. At the surface level, what they are seeing now, redefining quantum physics, not redefining it, remembering it and getting people to bloody remember it, is there was this crisscross pattern all over the surface area of this proton. And if you can imagine sort of a net around a ball or a net around a sphere, you had this crisscross pattern. Now, in every where a line crosses a line, there's a little point. And what he was saying is I think it was something like this, and I may get this wrong, but he was saying that they've analyzed the mass of, because what they found is these little dots, these little where the lines cross, they were mini wormholes. Wow. And he was saying that they were measuring I think either the mass of the wormhole or the mass of the proton, probably the mass of the wormhole. And what they found was it was akin to the mass of the universe. And they went into other stuff, and that's pretty much what he said in that piece. Now, what does that mean? Let's talk about entanglement, what that really means. It means that the universe is, as we already know, everything is connected. And a mini wormhole goes through to every other proton, every other electron in existence across multiple universes. That's unbelievable. And so when we talk about this power of thought, it's not nothing. It is the most energetic power that we have. So when you talk about this focus on thought, Nancy, you're absolutely bang on. And we need to get back to that communication because, and this ties right into what I'm trying to do with Above Duality, we need to get people empowered, equipped with knowledge, and this great stuff. But we need to get them empowered to the reality that they have all of the power. Michael, your partner's comment was wonderful, and I'll add to it and close off to let someone else speak here. But so many people, Christians or otherwise, have been waiting for the second coming, only to realize the second coming was us all along.
Right. And it's actually beautifully expressed in the title of a commentary on the New Testament by the great yoga master Paramahansa Yogananda. His book is called The Second Coming of Christ, and the subtitle is The Resurrection of the Christ Within You. And that is the whole point, of course, of the science of meditation, of yoga, is to directly commune with Source in scientific meditation. That is inherent in us, that resurrection to Christ consciousness takes place within us, and it does not necessitate, the Lord appearing in a cloud of glory. It's very easy to forget passages in the New Testament where, for example, he says, the wonders I have done, so shall you do, and greater than this. Or where Christ says, know you not that in your scripture it says you are gods, and to as many as believed on him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, the daughters of God. So this is the message. We can attune with Christ, adore Christ, receive blessings from Christ while awakening to the Christ within us, which is, if you go to the mystical gospel, if you go to the Gospel of John and the words of Christ at the Last Supper, it's just over and over again, as I am one in you and the Father is one in me, one in love. This is what it is. It's heart activation is where Christ returns within each one of us. So anyway, that's certainly been a very deep and powerful current in my life for a lot of years, and it comes back to sacred science. It does come back to this challenge we face right now of how to most strategically, as Nancy says, apply this sacred science of thought and energy in this moment. And I want to bring something up, Nancy, that you touched on earlier when I said, hey, we've got the power to do this. Let's do like you and Walt did with, excuse me, with the King mine disaster in Colorado. You cleaned up a whole river system of the Southwest with, angelic help and etheric shungite devices and the yes from Gaia. Once enough people had woken up, let's do that with the virus. We need to do it now. And you responded and you said, yeah, well, my guides are saying we need to wait. We could do it right now. But this trauma everybody's going through, it's a wake-up call, and people need to go through it. And yes, there needs to be suffering, or what you might call collateral damage, in order for people to really wake up and get it. Now, strategically, I guess I can understand that, but it does sound awfully cold-hearted. And it does, if you stretch it just a little bit, how is that any different from a false flag operation? Well, we're pulling the convoy protection from the Lusitania because the Lusitania really needs to be sunk by German submarines in order for the American people to wake up for the necessity to declare war on the Kaiser. So it's a pity about all those men, women, and children aboard the Lusitania, but they're just going to have to be the collateral damage that wakes people up. Now, okay, that was the dark agenda to trigger American involvement in a war that killed tens of millions of people ultimately, and obviously was a dark agenda thing. But I'm sorry, and even though I understand, from the light perspective, it's like, hey, this wake up is an action, we don't want to interrupt it. Still, for me, as a Templar whose code calls for defending those who cannot defend themselves, it's like walking past an alley in which a young woman is being raped at knife point and just saying, well, the neighborhood really needs to wake up to this sort of thing. And this is just going to be part of the emotional trauma that does it. And on I go to pick up my pizza. And I just have trouble with it. And
what I was trying to explain is that we need people focused as they are, because as soon as this goes away, they're going to go back to their old lives. The people that are dying have made a soul agreement to die at this time. Okay? There's nothing that any of us can do about that. That's a soul agreement. What I'm saying is that we need to wake up the people to get them to a point that they are a formidable, opponent. And to do that, we have to basically get them to the Christ consciousness. I don't like to use that word, but that awareness of your inner self. Okay, I always thought in terms of a higher self, that you got Nancy Hopkins 3D type, and then you got the higher self. And last week, and again, synchronicity and timing, last week, Ani Avedissian said to me on a Say What show, she said, she started describing taking your inner self that is corroded with all of this garbage crap that we've gotten from the 3D energies, and to scrub it clean so that it then can essentially grow. The expansion, the awakeness, the ascension is this inner self of ours. It was never outer. It's always been inner. I didn't get it. And so what I want to try to do is to give people the tools to scrub off all that garbage. And part of that is realizing at the 3D you got taken down a real deep rabbit hole. Okay, so you say, oh, okay, I'm scrubbing it off, I'm scrubbing all that stuff of what I think is out there. And you scrub it off, and then you start to get a little bit lighter, and you start to see more, and you go, oh, and my gosh, there's that, and I scrub that off, so that we can essentially grow into our own 3D bodies to become who, Jesus is referencing when he says, you're going to be able to do everything I do and better. We got to get to the people. We've got to wake the people up one at a time. We do that by doing these shows, by thinking, sitting by ourselves, by, having conversations when we don't want to engage in the 3D because we know that those people are not going to listen to us. We just thinking to build up an entire new paradigm of conscious thought. And, I, as a scientist, can tell you how that works scientifically, but I'm not about to. I'll write another book and explain it. But right now, we need them focused on this world, the world. I mean, when was the last time you cared about how many people died in Italy? You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
And this is why, okay, and again, another thing that you can think in terms of is that when you start to get into it, you start to fall down that rabbit hole of fear and just say, not on this timeline. Not in this reality. Reinforce the fact that we've got a new reality. We got a new timeline. Timelines are what make up realities. But this reality, this timeline is a timeline where human beings finally wake up internally and scrub themselves clean so that we can then manifest the reality of the golden rule.
Yeah, I love that.
Let me jump in here just quickly. You're both absolutely right. You're both right. And I want to make a point here, which I believe is important. And this, again, goes back to leadership, and it's 3D, but it's also higher density, is that there's, at this time, in this awakening where there's so much division on the planet, this is changing rapidly right now, but there has been so much division, is there has to be a viewpoint that there is levels to these quote-unquote red pills. Now, we, as light warriors, those of us, I'm also part of a sort of a not covert, but a relatively secret intelligence group of wonderful friends, small group. And one of them in there is a seer. And I can tell you that she is genuine, for sure, because I've seen some of the things that she has, and I'm not at her level awakenedness spiritually. But some of the things that she talks about, I go, sorry, you lost me 10 minutes ago. It's so deep and it's so incredible, but I don't know what you're talking about. Let's remember that we all have a role to play here. Some of us have a role to walk by that person who's being stabbed on the street. Some of us have a role to jump in, and neither of them is wrong, and we can't define that. That which could be labeled is already limited. We can't put a label on that. So let's remember that as I don't want to put people who are awakened on a pedestal here, but for the Jedi Masters in this movement, in this awakening, they have a role to play. For the people maybe a step below that as they're catching up, they have a role to play, and then there's another layer down. So let's remember that yes, people are ready. They are ready. It's 100%. But we still have to be diligent in meeting people where they're at. And in order to do that, you have to be certainly diligent, but you have to be interested in getting to know them and where they're at vibrationally, because then we can connect and bring them up. So you're both absolutely right. There are people that are going to be doing work in the ethers right now. There are people that are going to be doing work just below that. And there are going to be people who are boots on the ground doing the 3D stuff. And all is great. But I'm absolutely on the train of, certainly in my mission here, on the promotion of thought, ascension, and focus.
Well, when I've been going through life, I've noticed that I know I'm a pathfinder. And so I get out so far, and then everything stops. And I used to, when I was younger, I'd fight this. Let's go. We were having such a good time. Let's go. Let's go. And then I realized that I can't go any farther than the people behind me. I try to put out there, and I'm not alone. I'm saying I because I know me. But I put out this energy field, and then it has to kind of coalesce into the people that are behind me. And then boom, there's enough energy to go further. We cannot do this if we do not teach. And I hope that everybody that ever listens to me believes that I'm trying to teach you what I know. I'm not better than you. It was my job to go there first. But I can't get there without you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unifying these perspectives that David was pointing out to you and me just now, Nancy. Excuse me. About, me saying, hey, don't walk past the alley where a young woman's being attacked. And using that as an allegory, metaphor, whatever, that for souls who've made that contract, right? That's on the higher level, that's going to happen because we as souls magnetize to ourselves the experiences we need to learn the lessons that we came here to learn. And that can feel very harsh and cold sometimes when you look at the suffering in the world, and it can seem like this cold detachment to say, yes, well, I'm walking by because, that soul, that is their karma, and I have my work to do, so mind your own business and I'll mind mine. One of the things that my lineage teaches in this regard is meditation in which the love of God catches fire in your heart and you don't love individual human beings for their flaws and failings. You love the heart of God in their hearts. And so on that level, you simultaneously rise to this level of seeing the big picture of the evolution of souls and the painful lessons we draw to ourselves and the necessity of isolated, meditation for extended times to be able to achieve that. And you have a sensitive, loving heart for the suffering of human beings. Your detachment does not extend so far that you walk past suffering in a cold and detached way. But at the same time, because you are more aligned with your own true soul's purpose, you know when and where to give your attention and your focus so that you are not dragged down into a situation that it is not your dharma to complete, to participate in, to heal. But
it is your karma to have had that decision. Okay, so let's say I'm walking by somebody that is having a problem in an alley. I'm there and I've got to make a decision because this is where we all learn. I know I'm going to be of no use. I'm probably going to get the crap beat out of me, and I can't do it in the 3D. I call in their angels. I call in my angels. Help them, please. That's where our power is.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, it's that intuitive knowing. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'll just maybe share a story here. When I talk about the levels, I love what you're talking about. When I talk about the levels of meeting people where they're at, I think I experienced that most fervorously and most recently in my first wife. Many people know this about me, but my first wife died 2017, very young, a very difficult time in my life, obviously. But with the truths that I've learned about, what quote unquote death is, it quickly didn't become a period of sorrow. It became a period of complete elation and revelation, in fact. Now, as Jen was at transition and officially 3D died, I began to meet her in the astral, in very, very lucid dreams, and it was absolutely her consciousness. Anyway, and she was just struggling. She hadn't fully made the transition yet, and we were coming together in dreams, and we'd be doing things like we'd be on the couch opening mail, and then all of a sudden she would stop and go, what's going on? Something's changed. It feels weird. And I would say, yes, you've died. You've moved on into higher realms. And then the dream would stop every time. This went on for about 2-3 weeks. Every other night I have a dream like this. And then one day, it was a Sunday, I met her in a dream, but it was different. I was in this library, and she had appeared to me about 10 feet away, thereabouts, and she just stood there. And there was a power and an energy that I cannot put into words, in human words, to her. And she was just standing in her fully, God source consciousness, strength. And it kind of scared me, actually. It was really very, very powerful, although I didn't feel fear. And she transferred to me, I've made the continuation, and I've made contact with her since. However, I came out of that and I just felt empowered. And of course, I became really, really energized and very positive about the whole situation. That was I came out of grief and mourning. But what the universe would then bring to me is every time I go out there or thereabouts, or every other time, I would always meet someone who had just gone through a loss, or had gone through a very difficult period, and someone was dying, whatever it was, across that category. And I would try every time, especially when they would talk to me about, say, one lady came to me, for example, one day and was talking about her father who had just died. And I was so excited for her. I was delighted for her, because I knew firstly where her father had gone, most likely. And I knew that she was going to go on this path of great awakening. But of course, she didn't know that. She didn't and hadn't gone deep into understanding death as I have done and continue to. So she wasn't at the level. And so my communication to her, although it did affect her, by the way, in thought form and in consciousness for sure, it kind of scared her away. And she probably thought I was a little bit weird. But when I'm talking about the levels, I'm going to use that as a kind of an anchor point here, is we do have to be mindful of where people are at. And that's not to take away the potency of what we're doing or what our mission is here. But I think it's important to stress again, just that topic.
Well, I just picked up something, okay? You didn't put her off because of what you perceived she thought. You put her off because you said to her what she felt, and she wasn't supposed to feel. Too many times when somebody passes over, we understand it in a very deep internal. If you love somebody, it's your whole soul is loving that person. And so we have this reaction of, death, and part of us is saying, oh, no, and part of us is going, oh my God, it's a glorious day, because we know where they're gone. And then the 3D comes in and puts all this guilt on us. Yeah. So what I got when I was looking at it, because when you started looking at it, I remoted it, and then I can even see deeper. And yes, you were telling her what she was really feeling, and she didn't think she should. You gave her permission to feel that. That was your gift to her. So that's sometimes we say things that we perceive how it might be taken, but trust ourselves. To give the messages that we're feeling at the time. Don't try to second guess how we should say it. I mean, yes, you have to be, but if you are kind to everybody, if I have this thing now, and it's recent, but I would rather be kind than make a point. If kindness is the only thing you're giving people, and you're giving them your authentic self, what you're feeling, because undoubtedly they're feeling it too. Just an aside, you can relieve yourself of that guilt.
I love it. Yeah.
You did a gift.
Yeah. And that's where the heart activation really becomes manifest and dynamic. I'm sure, you've both heard that Buddha saying, that question, before you speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? And to give kindness rather than wake somebody up when they might not be particularly ready to be woken up by you and haven't exactly invited it, they'll remember your kindness. And it's just so tempting. Oh my gosh, on the internet or on Facebook or whatever, it is so tempting to be just that little bit cleverer than the other person, that little bit more informed. And yes, sometimes if the conversation is open and receptive, we can share something that people are actually receptive to, that actually can help wake them up. Maybe we just share a link or something in a, hey, you might want to check this out kind of way. I know for myself, I learned, I'm still learning, but learned a lot of the lesson of not being as clever, well-informed, witty as I think the debate I was having might call for, because to back off and be kind and respect people for where they are in that moment, that'll be remembered. That will have greater impact, and that will leave the conversation open for the right time or moment intuitively down the road when maybe you can say something helpful. So thanks for that, Nancy. I continually need to hear that.
Yeah, me too. Amen. I love it. I said this to you last time, Michael. I've learned this through, again, doing it all wrong. But people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And boy, is that true. I've done it in the realm of just sort of teaching people how to professionally network, having been taught myself, is there's kind of this this process you go through in a conversation, and it's called form, and this is in many books, in fact. But it's when you engage with someone to try and network with them, and you're just sort of meeting them for the first time. I do this today. It's family, occupation, recreation, message, and that's sort of it doesn't have to follow that, but that's the sort of the channel you follow, or the structure you follow when you're trying to, and not, in a script way, very genuinely, if you can, to connect with someone. And at the end of that is obviously the message. Once you've connected, added value, and served them, and being kind and all the great stuff, is if it's appropriate, share a message. And I've got a little vlog coming up on the ideal red pill strategy. And I've been trialing it for a while now. I do it a lot. And one of my daily practices is to give someone some form of a red pill to add to the consciousness of the awakening. And I've got it wrong a lot, but anyway, I just wanted to share that. It's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. I remember learning the form approach in networking myself in a business context several times. Yeah, I ask somebody, hey, oh, where are you from? Does your family live around here? What do you do? Oh, that's interesting. And just being sincere and genuine. What do you do for fun? What's your recreation? And then you find out whether there's common values, some common experiences, some ground that you both happen to be standing on where if it's appropriate for a message to be communicated, then you can do it, having honored human connection in those ways. And it is such a delicate thing. I mean, if I've just learned if somebody uses the phrase conspiracy theory, and they go, all these conspiracy theories. Now, on one level, that's an indication that they are in a place where they're not receptive, not open. They're buying the, demonization of disturbing information, which allows them to stay in denial. On the other hand, I use the phrase conspiracy theories to dismiss wacky, groundless, paranoid theories, of which there are plenty, and of which, of course, are seeded into the truth movement in order to make us look ridiculous as a disinformation tactic. It's a basic counterintelligence strategy. It's controlled opposition. It's, the Dan Rather thing, right? Where you get some respected source to believe something false, get them to go public with it, and then expose them, and they lose credibility. So there's that aspect of the, conspiracy theory tag. And yet it's such a useful thing to be able to say, all right, know your audience, connect with them on a human level, and then make the decision, all right, my dharma calls for my attention to be given elsewhere. And just say, nice to meet you, have a beautiful day, and on you go. And not throw your pearls before oink oinks. Not to say that people Not to say that people who don't happen to have woken up to what I'm aware of are swine, but it was the handy gospel phrase. But to throw your pearls before those who are just not ready to receive them,
Okay. Here's another hint. Okay, just because you're not engaging them at the 3D does not mean that you cannot engage them energetically. And you look at them and you just bless them. Send out.
Right.
Don't just dismiss people, because the energies that we have are so powerful. Just think of your heart and send them a heart blast. A friend of mine says she throws blankets of love over people. Any stranger you meet, it's their guides, their angelic help, whatever you want to call it, is bringing them into your energy field. Acknowledge it. And acknowledge it and let the energy go, and realize that for every piece of energy that you expel, you'll get 3 times more.
Yeah, that's so true. There's a wonderful technique, a prayer, that a wonderful monk I knew, he was my counselor when I left my theater career to work as a vegetarian cook in a monastery. And he was in his late 70s by that time, but he shared with us this beautiful prayer when you are in conflict with someone, to, on your own, visualize that person bathed in light, and to pray, dear God, fill this person with peace and harmony, peace and harmony, peace and harmony, and to visualize them in that light and say that prayer for 3 minutes, and then to say, Lord, please fill me with peace and harmony, fill me with peace and harmony for 3 minutes. And the people who undertook this practice in regard to a relationship, whether it be with a boss or a spouse or a friend or a child, tangible results, energetic shifts, harmonic reconciliation can follow when we do exactly what you're describing, Nancy. This, to send them this blast of light.
Amazing. Yeah, it's one of the things I've started to do as little as about 4 months ago. And it helps me get out of my damn ego. Although ego is just I am in Latin, it's what follows it that's important. You choose what follows it. Is I will thought beam to hopefully everyone I come into proximity to today, and of course others in meditation. But I'll beam, if I see someone, I'll say to them in my head, and I'll throw to them, you are a hello friend, you are so loved by God, by the universe. And I'll try and do that to everyone. And definitely when I'm driving on the roads here in Western Canada, as I have been allowed myself to be taken into various negative vibrational states by observing and labeling certain people's behavior on the roads. So it's working for me positively that way. But no, love it. Love the conversation.
Yeah, there's one other method was shared with me by a monk, actually, which I wrote about in my book, Romancing the Divine, which you can find on Amazon under Michael Henry Dunn. And this one monk taught us about, he was counseling people, and he found that when he was counseling people, they'd be pouring out their problems to him, and he might be in a bad mood, and he might be growing irritated, and he'd be looking at them with the receptive face, that you look at as a counselor. I have my receptive face on, so they feel like I'm listening to them, even though I'm really growing rather exasperated with the pettiness of their problems or this or that. And he caught himself doing this and said, this is not who I want to be. This is not the service I came here to give. And so he undertook this method, which is that while looking into their eyes and listening to them, he would silently affirm, I love you, repeatedly, just silently in his mind while looking at them and listening. And at the inner repetition of those words, which are the words we all long to hear, within his inner silence while looking in their eyes, the whole vibration shifts. they feel it. They would feel this sudden receptivity, this bond, this light flowing between them, and suddenly they would feel a healing field happen, and he would feel it too. And the whole conversation would be changed simply because he shifted his focus from his own irritation and exasperation and looked into their eyes and mentally affirmed those magical words. And so when I heard him say this in a sermon once at this little chapel, I thought, okay, well, I've got to try this, you know. And it's funny when you do that. I mean, I did it one time at a restaurant, and this waitress, you know, she was kind of harried and stressed, and, you know, she's coming up to the table and, you know, trying to be like polite, but she's stressed out. And she's, yeah, you know, okay, folks, what do you like? You know, what do you have? And so I was practicing this. I was affirming, I love you, as I looked into her eyes. And she had her eyes looking down at her pad of paper. She's writing down orders, and she looks up at me, and she was visibly startled. She like did a double take because she was not used to seeing love pouring from the eyes of a stranger who's about to tell her, I want a macaroni and cheese. So anyway, there are these beautiful methods that we have that, you know, as you're saying, Nancy, that's what people will remember. And if we can't give them some awakening message, we can at least share a heart awakening reality that here is someone who is, you know, doing our best to tune into the divine within us, as the, you know, the Hindu greeting of Namaste. My soul bows to your soul.
Well, you know, there's a saying: if I smile at a stranger, two people become happy. You know, if you begin to, the first thing I recommend for people is that they begin to talk to themselves. I mean, seriously, talk to yourself. The reason they tell you don't talk to yourself because people think you're crazy is because they don't want you to understand that within your own beingness, you have every answer you ever will voice a question to. So talk to yourselves. Get to know yourselves. If you're not going to take the time to know yourself, know really what you want, really what you need, really what you're feeling, who the hell else is going to do it? This is what you're here for. And once you begin to talk to yourself and know yourself, then you're going to feel much more comfortable being your authentic self and being able to reach out energetically with just your thoughts to people all around you. And once you begin to do that and see the difference and see what happens to you when you do this, because you're being fed back their goodness. It's just, that's the way to the awakening, to the ascension, is one individual at a time.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, this is coming in for me. We'll see where it goes. But, you know, we brought in Elvis Presley to the conversation a couple times in our last two shows, you know, connected with the Blue Star Rigel, the unique blue light of that star, which is so markedly similar to the blue light of the meteorite, comet, call it what you will, that hit Karelia, and the blue light that witnesses said actually shone on the very small house in Tupelo, Mississippi, the night that Elvis was born. And when you're talking about kindness, you know, okay, Elvis is this cultural icon, and, you know, with 1,000 Elvis impersonators, kind of a kitschy kind of image in a lot of people's minds who don't know his story. But he had this unique, powerful, astonishing level of magnetism. And it wasn't just that he was this amazing performer, this amazing talent, and he'd walk onto a stage and people who were there just because they were humoring their dates, you know, guys going, okay, my girlfriend's an Elvis fan, I'm going to go. And Elvis walked out on the stage, and suddenly the guy was just transformed because of this magnetism Elvis carried. And he was, by all accounts, just an extraordinarily kind, thoughtful, and humble human being. And because of his magnetism, he was able to project that love at this very high level. And this to me comes back to, okay, how do we get this message out? How do we reach people with this? How do we take the truths that we have done our best to share in this conversation, waking people up to their own sovereign power, waking people up also to the hard information about 5G, its interaction with the virus, how to use sacred science to rise above the fear paradigm that's being promulgated. How do we do all this? Well, for me as a storyteller, it comes back to the great stories, which are about unforgettable characters that we care about. There was a friend of mine in Los Angeles who's really at the top of her field in terms of as a global health professional working in film and television, where a public service announcement about a health problem, you want everybody to know, it's like everyone should be aware of this virus and how to come, etc., isn't nearly as powerful as embedding that information in the story of a primetime medical drama, say ER back in the day, where this information is brought out in the flow of a story about characters that you have come to deeply care about. As human beings, this is the dynamic by which information registers with us. It registers on a heart and compassion and caring level in the context of great stories. And the reason I bring this up is that this emerging story of who Elvis really was, and at the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution in our global media platform, we are currently working on a documentary called Blue Star Rising on the hidden spiritual life of Elvis Presley. It wasn't entirely hidden. Wonderful writers like Larry Geller have covered a lot of it, but this is based on hours of very personal conversations, recordings that we have access to create this story, in which he is sharing aspects of himself that he just did not dare share with his fans at the time, that his management was trying to suppress. And it's an amazing story of this great soul struggling, with this world that he lived in of being Elvis. And Elvis is one of the few globally recognizable one-word names. More so than Madonna, more so than, a handful of other people you could name, even though it's been 42 years since he passed. And the reason I bring this up is just that I think Spirit is bringing in these magical means of reaching out through story to reach people. I mean, just your story, Nancy, or yours, David, of how you came to this work. And for me, Nancy's story is fantastic. I mean, the first time you went on Project Camelot, Nancy, you were just your usual laconic, blunt self. And so, Carrie said, well, tell us about your background. And you told it, okay. It was the remote viewing story. It was the Soviet embassy story. It was your, discovering your remote viewing abilities in the context of U.S. Army intelligence and finding out what the Soviets were up to and the, and your own soul history, came in a little bit in terms of that rather prominent military officer incarnation you had in the Second World War. And, people remember the information because they remember you and they remember your story. And people are going to remember David Sherjan and your voice and your vibration and your story as it comes across in this program, because that's, as human beings, that's what we identify with. If you remember the end of Return of the Jedi, third movie in the original Star Wars trilogy, you got the little Ewoks or whatever, the little furry creatures on the planet, and the happy ending story, you have C-3PO around a fire with all the little Ewoks, and C-3PO as a protocol droid, has decided to do his storytelling mode, and he's being a riveting storyteller, like reenacting the Ice Walkers of Thoth and then doing an imitation of Darth Vader. It's hilarious. It's George Lucas reminding us, hey, everybody, this was all ever about nothing but a great story, and here's a protocol droid sharing it with a bunch of enchanted Ewoks, just like you in the movie theater are the enchanted Ewoks. This story's going deep into you of the Force and the light and the dark. Anyway, that was a little bit of a meandering tangent, and a way for me to share about our friend Elvis. But anyway, we're nearing the end of our time. Nancy, David, any thoughts on our beautiful big picture?
We actually started late, so we've got almost 6 minutes. David,
okay.
Why don't you just give us what message you would like to give the audience at this time?
Well, I think we've already given it, but it's beautiful stuff, guys. I love that. I absolutely agree, Michael. I think in my journey of life, in certainly in the 3D and beyond, people do gravitate to creating meaning behind other things, but two key areas. One of them is stories. We absolutely, relate to those, some of the strongest, and also symbols and sort of pictures as well. We are very well able to program those for memory and emotions and all kinds of other things. You get into neuro-linguistic programming, neuro-associative conditioning, etc., that kind of realm. So I agree, the stories are so important. I think, you talk about, and just in closing here, what can we do, right? I'm big on, I get a little bit frustrated with sometimes some of these channels, and some of them are my friends, so I don't get frustrated with them, but I get frustrated with people who are just out there sharing a whistleblower story or sharing information, although important. For me, it's like, okay, now what? Now you've got to tell people, or in my opinion, you've got to go to the place of equipment so they can feel empowered, right? So we're talking about really underneath it all today. And I watched The Last Avengers. I love Marvel movies. Of course, we all know what movies are about, and those people who don't know will soon find out how much intelligence agencies have been involved in screenwriting. Anyway, that's another topic for another time. But at the end of that movie, of course, the final Avengers, as they charge towards Thanos, this terrible, evil, maybe he's sort of the deep state personified person, of course, on his mission. But Captain America says, Avengers, assemble. And of course, it's very dramatic, and the music the score is beautiful. And I think that's the message, isn't it? It's light workers, light warriors, assemble at this time. If you're looking for the sign of the beginning of the mission or the work that you need to start, look no further. This is it, folks. This is the sign that light warriors at different levels, Jedi masters at different levels, Jedi, as you were sort of going into there, Michael, it's time for us to step on the gas with this focus on thought, this focus on intention, and this focus on love and kindness, and not let things distract us, even though some things are important to bring to the, education-wise awareness of consciousness. But if you're listening to this and you think you fall into that bracket, which if you are, you probably do, let's keep our focus strong on bringing the light and vibration to people, to the planet, and let's kickstart this journey from upper 3D to 4 to 5 and beyond in this, what I believe is a very, very exciting time.
Well, the secret here is that everybody is a light worker. You wouldn't be here if you weren't.
Very true.
Right. Well, there are some, I guess, who are more ready than others to embrace that as their purpose, but every one of us has the capacity and the potential to do so.
Yes.
No, it's just a statement of physics.
Oh, I love that.
Well, okay, yes, on a very high level. on a very high level, but I'm not going to like walk up to my most denial entrenched, ignorance soaked acquaintance and say, sorry, as a law of physics, you are required as a light worker, you are one, whether or not you know it, to listen to my message and shift into your light worker warrior. Got it? Right. But yes, we need to remember that you never know that, that is, there are going to be awakenings we would never have guessed to be possible in people we would never have dreamed would see the truth. So I look forward to that aspect.
I hope you keep reminding yourself of that.
Yeah. I count on you, Nancy, at least every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time to remind me.
Look, we're all particles of God. I mean, if you get, I mean, I virtually remember the instant when I went, oh my heavenly day. God was bored and started creating because she started, or it started, or we started thinking. And we're so powerful, we manifest. So we manifest these crazy ass games that we're in. It's all storytelling. But the truth of it is we're all light workers. We all got the energy of God. We wouldn't be here. Now they've got playthings on the playboard. Those beings that don't happen to have that little energy signature. But Dolores Cannon called them backdrop people. Not everybody is a player. But you have to treat everybody as a player, because if they're not, well, it doesn't mean we can't bring the source to them.
Yes.
Anyway, this is pretty near the time we have to say goodbye, Michael. David, we have to get you back on. You're just amazing. And namaste.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David. Yeah, this is... in fact, I'd love to follow up with you immediately once we sign off here with some ideas. The acronym you brought forward of what you try to do as a practice every day of SAGE, SAGE, and could you remind us again what those 4 letters stand for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for saying that, guys. It's been nothing but an honor, and look forward to more. SAGE stands for SAGE. So as a daily practice, S, serve one new person today before yourself, whatever that means, but be in service to another person. And it could be more than one, by the way, but make it one as a minimum. For me, I try and do that. A is to add value. So similar thing, but it could be different. Add value to someone. It could be a red pill. Could be just pouring someone a cup of coffee. G is to give gratitude in all areas of experience, whether you think they're negative or not, to give gratitude and thanks for what you're going through today, ideally beginning and end of day. And then the E is kind of a number of things, but it's empower, equip, and encourage people in some or someone in some way today. Because I can tell you, as you've spoken about before, Michael, and many others have, is that everybody needs a little bit of hope and encouragement, us included, and it does make the world go round. So,
yeah, I love that. Save, add, gratitude, and empower. And of course, for us here at Radio 5G, it's a joint project of Cosmic Reality Radio Network and the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution, or SAGE. That is our outer manifestation organization here in southern Colorado. So we love that beautiful resonance as well. So I'll follow up with you right away, David, after we sign off. But again, thank you so much, and thank all of our friends around the world for tuning in. This has been Radio 5G. Michael Henry Dunn with my wonderful co-host Nancy L. Hopkins and our wonderful guest David Sherjan. Check in with us next week, folks. God bless us, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. May it be.
Let it